This is Say Chat episode 2. Today we're going to be going over, for all of the new players who may be listening to this season, since we are gearing it towards you guys this season, we're going to be going over like tips and tricks and how to get started in World vs. World. We covered a lot about why it is that we enjoy World vs. World and why we think that you should come and join us in the Borderlands. So today we're going to kind of give you some things that we think may help you ease some of that anxiety and kind of take that step, and so that you're a little bit more prepared when you finally do get into the Borderland. Before that though, the panel, Z, Sahana, Regal, and Chef have joined me again. Do you guys want to say just like a quick hello to everyone so they know your voice?
Hello.
Hello.
Chef.
I'm Sahana.
I'm Z.
I am REGALPOWER.
Yo, I like the way you said that. I
Which is
am
authority.
Regal Power. Yeah, so there's a lot that can kind of go into tips and tricks, and I know that every individual, when you ask a vet, is going to have a different tip that they give you going into World vs. World. Some are more general, like make sure you have a correct build. And we're going to have that next episode, so I'm gonna ask you guys not to be like, yo, make sure you're wearing Marauders, or gear that has vitality or toughness on it. I want, like, actual tips. Like, when you're going into the Borderland, this is something you're gonna wanna watch out for. This is something you're gonna wanna do. This is an unspoken rule where if you don't follow this, you can kind of get a bad name for yourself right off the bat, or hey, it's okay, and it's actually a really good idea to just go into, like, team chat and say, hey, I'm new, I'm looking for tips, or someone that is willing to show me what to do, or, like, guide me along type thing. So, I'm gonna throw it over to Sahana and ask what her biggest tip is for people who are going to step into the Borderland for the first time, and are kind of nervous about it and want to know, like, what's one thing that they should be doing, shouldn't be doing, like, biggest tip, in your opinion?
I think for those that are absolutely completely new, have no idea what they're getting themselves into, kind of go in, not necessarily forgetting all the other classes, or, like, whatever class you're on, not necessarily forgetting how to play it, but kind of take all of the PvE stuff that you know for that class and set it aside. Because I think when I first started, or more recently, even when, as I got into builds and all that stuff, I think there are a lot of nuances that might fly in PvE or even raids that that could actually be a disservice in World vs. World. And I don't want to get too much into it because I know the whole next episode is going to be builds, and we'll probably talk about that there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, I think I mentioned this in the last episode, where your traits are going to be different. The skills that you're going to rely on most are going to be different. And so to kind of come in, have that sort of open mind, and being able to tailor the skills that you use to the situation and observe, I think is really helpful.
Okay. So you're saying, like, be more reactive in what your mindset is going into it, is what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah, a bit, and just kind of like you're learning something completely new, essentially, and so not to go in expecting that you already know everything about your class and the way that it is played, because they don't carry over through the different game modes.
True. That's actually really true.
If you're new, this is my biggest tip. If you're new and you're worried, you might be a little stressed, a little nervous, best thing you can do, in my opinion, is press the B button on your keyboard and choose a map. And just go in. Just start. Just don't you're gonna get a little information overloaded, especially if you're asking for advice. The Guild Wars 2 community is pretty good about that, is like nuking people. I get asked a lot, usually about raids, but if I get asked something, I usually do my best to absolutely overwhelm the new players the best I can. So that's probably gonna happen to you.
It's like an initiation, right? We gotta overwhelm them, otherwise they're not part of the community. I'm just kidding. You are part of the
Well,
community.
That's my advice. Get in the mix. Just start. You'll get better as you go. But if you worry too long, and I mean, it's good to be prepared, but you don't want to. You can definitely. You're just going to waste time if you don't start because you don't think you've Googled enough or whatever.
True. I think it was last season. Well, it had to have been last season, but Globe, who is on our panel last season, said that you can watch as many videos as you want on World versus World Commanding, but you're not going to get the experience and learn how to do it until you actually go out and you do it. It's the same thing, right? Don't put too much stress on yourself being perfect and knowing all the information before you just rip the band-aid off and jump in.
Exactly.
Yeah. So SAHANA already spoke. Z, what is your biggest tip for new players going into World versus World?
Yeah, so like, super brand new or pretty new people kind of don't know what they're doing yet. I would say just pick a map and go in there, but I would also say it's kind of just like an attitude thing. Go in with like a good attitude, willingness to like relearn some stuff, because like SAHANA said, your class is very different in World v World than PvE, and you might have to relearn some priorities about your build or change it, and that's okay. But honestly, I think just going in with a good attitude and not like some weird expectation that like you're gonna be perfect at everything, or you're gonna like go and fight someone really well. And I think just kind of honestly just go in and try to have some fun and not be scared to ask questions or go into, map chat and be like, hey, I'm kind of new. What do I do? Or join like a pug tag if you see them advertise it. It's honestly just jumping in and trying stuff out, really, because that's the best way to learn how to do stuff in World v World.
Yeah, I agree. We said last episode that World versus World is kind of like sandboxish, and there's like many different ways to play. So I feel like for myself, I don't usually give tips, but I want to give a tip this time. For myself, if you don't like one aspect of World versus World, try a different aspect of World versus World. Because I know a lot of people who say, I'm not really into the big Zerg stuff. Okay, that's fine. You don't need to be into the big Zerg stuff. That might not be like your niche within World versus World. Have you tried small scale Havoc? Have you tried 25v25 like Chef likes? Have you tried roaming? Because a lot of people love roaming, but they don't like other things in World versus World. So it's like there's all of these tiny little niches within the larger genre of World versus World. And so if I'm going to give a tip, I would say if you've tried one aspect and it's not for you, try another one before you completely write off World versus World, because everything goes into the pocket and everything makes World versus World a lot more dynamic and fluid and fun, because there's all of these different styles influencing each other and playing together on a borderland. But throwing it over to Chef, what is your biggest tip for people going into World versus World?
I love SAHANA's tip of forget everything you know about PvE. I think that's a really cool tip and one that I had not heard before, so I'm going to give big kudos to that. The tip that I have to come up with independently so that I'm not just stealing other people's ideas is join a tag and get incomes. And maybe think about joining a guild even. But like, even if you decide that group content isn't really your thing, comms in World versus World are used a lot in opposition to, like, if you do T4 fractals, nobody's going to be in Discord. They're just going to pug it, they're going to do their thing, and then they're going to leave. In World versus World, everything revolves around comms. And it doesn't mean that you have to participate. You don't have to say anything if you don't want to, but you're there to leech information from other people and figure out what they're looking at and how they're playing and what they think are important, so that you can kind of get put on the fast track to starting to understand some of the nuances and the particularities of the game mode. I don't think so. When I started, I was on Kining, and I played with Indo and Dodds for like 6 months, and I don't think I said a word. I just sat in their comms and listened to them talk about World versus World.
Mm-hmm.
It was huge for getting up to speed on like how the game mode works and what all the classes do and all this kind of stuff. It's a really, really valuable source of information. So yeah, I would say join a tag, get in comms. Even if you decide that you want to be, you know, a roamer or someone who does Havoc, it's going to be really helpful for getting you up to speed on all the stuff that's going on in World versus World.
True. Even roamers and Havoc groups, they have guilds and voice channels where they just go hang out while they're roaming around or 1v1ing and stuff like that. So I like that tip. And it's I can't say it's essential because it's not essential, but it's strongly suggested that you do this. Like, it changes the whole World versus World experience for you, especially when you find those people that you click with and you just really enjoy either listening to or hanging out with and talking to. It changes the whole thing, finding like your little community. Oh man, I really do like all of these tips. They're so good. I want to move into something else now, if you guys are okay with that. Instead of tips, I'd like to kind of brush over what are some essential things that new players would need to know going into World versus World. If that is worded correctly. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys. Like, what are some things that you wish that you knew right off the bat? Like, absolutely must know facts about World versus World. Either the community, the game mode itself, or whatever. I'll just throw it out to whoever wants to catch the ball and let them go first.
I'll catch that ball.
Okay.
Run boosters all the time for like your first 600 ranks.
Fair, yes.
So World versus World uses a separate kind of like leveling / mastery system that is tied to what your rank is in World versus World. And there's a lot of really nice stuff that's gated behind that progression mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
Things like auto loot in World versus World.
Gliding.
Things like legendary armor and legendary trinket time gates. Things like
gliding,
pips so that you get faster tickets. Things like Warclaw and gliding.
Mm-hmm.
And the faster you progress through the initial ranks, the more quality of life stuff you're going to get to unlock sooner. That's really going to increase your overall enjoyment of the game mode.
True.
So grab all your boosters out of the bank that you've been saving up and just run them until you're like rank 500, rank 600, something like that. And it'll really let you unlock a lot of these quality of life things a lot faster.
If you're listening to this right now, buy the candy corn gobbler. Let's go.
Yes.
Oh, yes. I use that all the time. And the snowflake one as well.
Yeah. Definitely.
Anything you can do to move through the early ranks faster.
Yeah,
Yes.
and if you're aiming for like something specific, like you want a legendary and stuff like that, that speeds up some of the things that you need, especially if you're trying to get like the gift of battle. It speeds up the reward track significantly as well.
That too.
So it's like a win-win situation.
Boosters are OP in World v World because everything is kind of slow.
True. For everyone
Now
else.
that I took the best suggestion, let's see what other people come up with.
True. You picked the biggest one. So what about the rest of you? What do you think is like facts? Like, you need to know this going into World versus World type thing.
I mean, just off the top of my head, you're gonna die a lot.
Oh,
I was gonna say that.
Like a lot. And like
I was gonna
right.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's just like you will die so much you will ultimately think that there's something wrong with you, but there's not. It's just the way that the game mode works. So don't worry about it. Don't stress about it. It's gonna happen.
Eventually, you just become numb to it.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like,
You're like,
checking your character deaths, I'm just like,
yeah,
Oh,
you just
alright.
get
How
engaged,
many-
I'm like,
yeah.
oh, okay, time to
how
go
many
back again.
thousands of these are because the World vs. World is that calculated? But yeah, make your peace with that. I think instead of focusing on like dying, focus on trying to keep yourself like as mobile as possible so you can keep up and have that sort of buffer to maybe not
Yeah.
die as much.
Mm-hmm.
Like the War Claw, which goes
Like the
back
War
to Chef,
Claw, or
with
like
the reward track stuff.
you know, if you're on a Mesmer, you know, the focus
Ooh.
speed boost is
Yes.
great. Same for Firebrand Staff 3. Yeah, get to know your mobility skills.
That's so important. Mobility
Also, get to
skills.
know your stun breaks. Also,
That
get to know
too.
your personal condition clears.
Guys,
Yeah.
guys, we're
Yes.
diving into the next
that's a different
episode,
one.
guys.
That's a different one. That's a different one. Yeah, not you're gonna die a lot. That's
Yeah,
a big
lots of
that's a
death.
big one, and that's
Mhm.
okay. That's the whole. That goes back to me saying like having a good attitude. It's okay to die a lot, and please don't ever get frustrated by it because, like, it happens all the time.
True. Man, my World versus World characters, if you look at their death count compared to like my other like
In a
PvE
thousand.
characters,
Yeah.
it's like
In a thousand.
significantly more. I swear.
They're so fat. They're so fat in
I
the death
know,
count. I'm
I
like, oh my
know.
god.
Man.
Guild Wars 2 efficiency, y'all.
True, yeah. Regal, what do you think? You haven't spoken in a while, so I'm gonna pick on you.
As far as things that haven't been covered already, as for getting started, I think it's important to note also if you're a free-to-play player, you actually can still play World v World. Might be a little harder to track down a class for a core build, but it's definitely doable. I mean, especially if you're roaming core necro, pretty good.
Oh, yeah,
a lot
way
of
to go.
fear,
Hella
very good. So
Core
yeah,
guard,
even if
pretty good
yeah,
for
core
both
guard
damage
is-
and
yeah.
support.
True.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Core Thief has a bit of stealth skills, right? So
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think so.
It's also halfway decent for roaming. It's not
Yeah.
like a
Right.
Deadeye, but it's not bad.
I mean, that was the OG roaming build, way back in the day.
All core classes were the OG
Well,
builds
that's
back in the day.
I
Fair.
love playing against thieves. I love it.
Nice.
Is that sarcasm or?
That is sarcasm.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I
I
know-
thought I
I
heard it
heard
there. I
it.
thought I heard
I
it.
heard it.
Z,
I think.
it's your turn.
Yeah.
I
you know-
actually,
Oh.
sorry.
No, go.
I was just gonna say another really, 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 really important thing about the Guild Wars 2 combat system you should probably study up on for learning World v World or learning the game in general is boons. Boons and conditions and how they function and how they transfer and corrupt. Learning that system is massive.
Yeah, it's very complicated though. So like, don't stress. Like, learn
Take your time.
one thing once a week. I feel like that would be like a good goal. Learn what Alacrity does
Yeah.
this week, and then learn what Stab does next week, or learn what Quickness does next week. Or Stab is probably more important for World versus World.
Yeah, learn
but-
Stab first.
Yeah, Stab first.
And
Stab
Aegis.
first. Yeah, exactly.
Play Firebrand.
Moral of the story.
A lot of Firebrands have spoken.
Play
Play
Firebrand.
Firebrand.
There's a different hierarchy of importance of boons in World versus World. Like if you're coming from PvE and you're doing T4s and strikes and stuff like that, quickness and alacrity are kind of like the kings of group composition in PvE. In World versus World, the king of group composition is Stab. That's like pretty much it. Like
All the
swiftness
Stab.
is pretty good, Aegis is pretty good, but it's all about stability.
True.
Zergs die by stability.
Yes.
Or survive by stability.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Stab
it.
is like king in World versus World.
Have the Stab.
Yes. Okay, Z.
Support the Stab. Yeah.
Z,
oh, yeah.
your turn.
So, and I was. So one of the things I think is also important for World v World, kind of in your game settings, either keybinds or the combat like options within the game settings. Some of those. I can't remember which ones that I have, but I know for World v World specifically, having some of those, like having auto target off in World v World is really important, especially for some of your mobility items. Looking at, Soul Beast, some of the Soul Beast abilities that launch you at targets, and you technically use them to get away. I think some of those are also kind of important tips for World v World.
Yeah.
True. True.
Like looking at those combat option in your settings is important because you don't want all of them on for sure, and some of them are hindrances and instead of like helping you, especially auto attack. Because there's happened many times where I forget to like tick it off, and I'm trying to run away on a roamer build, and my person just leaps into 10 people, and I die immediately. But making sure you have the proper settings about face is also pretty important.
Yeah.
For World v. World.
It's kind of awkward though. About face is very awkward.
It takes a lot to get used to, but it's really strong when you're good at it.
So good.
And I feel like the tips I'm talking about are kind of like more nitty-gritty stuff, but they are still important, I think, for new players to kind of think about, because it will help. In the long run, I think it will help you have a more enjoyable time in World v. World if you kind of are aware of these settings and understand what they do, and then you can tweak them to whatever you need.
True.
Not to just recommend Reddish in like every podcast episode, but Reddish has a killer 10-minute guide on settings for World versus World that would be worth looking out. I'm sure that quietly I'll put it in the discussion.
Yeah, I will.
I'll
write it. I'll write it down now so that I don't forget.
That's an excellent guide. Like, go through that, set all of those settings up. They're really, really helpful.
Yeah, I think those, like, knowing, like, having a quick way to put your dodge key on, the most comfortable dodge key. I guess in World of World, dodges are important.
Yeah, dodges are very important.
Even more so than PvE. Like, people constantly moving around, dodging all the time. But in World v. World, World v. World, you gotta think smart about your dodges. Just don't do them all the time.
Yeah, it's really like, I know this is a general World or Guild Wars 2 thing, and a lot of people say this to new players when they start the game, but turning off double tap to evade is in my opinion essential in World versus World, because you can waste a dodge and then that you don't have that dodge when you need it in however many seconds because you accidentally tapped one thing twice, and it's like, okay, now that I need to dodge through this, I don't have this dodge. So definitely, turn that off and find a dodge key that you really, really like and that is very, very comfortable for you to use is really big.
Yeah, honestly, that option should just not even be in the game, because I don't know.
Some people like
anyone double tapping to dodge. Oof.
I know people who do
I spent 4 months using double tap to dodge. In World versus World, man. I would not wish it on my worst enemies. It's a horrendous setting.
Some people love it.
Also, if there's a single person out there listening to this who clicks on their health bar to dodge, you also need to break that habit. Like,
that's not
milliseconds count when you're dodging in World versus World. So the absolute fastest keybind that you can put your dodge on is going to save your life, like a non-zero amount of time.
Respectfully, turn off action cam.
There's some. Okay, so this is going to be like a very technical discussion, but there are some classes where action cam is pretty goated. It takes a lot to get used to, but action cam can be good for like a small handful of classes.
Kroof uses action cam, doesn't? I think she does. I think they go by they, actually.
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure they're like a big action cam enjoyer, as far as I remember. I wonder if they do a lot of World versus World, because I don't think every time I've popped into their stream that they've been doing World versus World, but that would be interesting to see. I definitely think it would be harder to pilot World versus World like that, but it is doable. But yeah, respectfully, I wouldn't recommend. I have a tip, and I'm actually wondering if you guys know this tip. So it's general knowledge that you can join World versus World whenever you want, but unlike PvP, not everything is scaled up in World versus World. Did you guys know this? So you'll be leveled to 80, but you don't gain access to level 80 food, level 80 gear, level 80 traits. You don't gain access to any of that. So you're scaled up to level 80 so that you're level 80, but you get none of the benefits of being level 80. You still have to unlock all of that stuff. So if you're a new player and people say, you can join World vs. World and you'll be scaled up to level 80, it's fine. Don't do it, please. You're going to have a worse experience joining and not having these things because you're going to be at a significantly... What's the word that I'm looking for?
Disadvantage.
Disadvantage. Yeah, you're going to be at a disadvantage compared to everyone else because you're not going to have the gear, you're not going to have the traits, you're not going to have all of these things. And in World vs. World, they do matter. You don't need Ascended everything. You can still run with exotics, but having level 80 gear compared to having whatever level gear that you have on is going to make a bigger difference and make your time more enjoyable or less enjoyable. Obviously, if you're running with like a large group, it might not matter as much because there's less personal responsibility, but I would highly recommend
you hit
to
someone
not.
who's not 80 in World vs. World,
they
you
die.
notice. Like
They
when
die.
you're a damaged player and you hit someone who's not 80, they explode.
They die very quickly. And you can't use any of the food. Like usually if you're running with a commander, they'll drop Ascended food. You can't use that food. You can't use any of the level 80 stuff. So honestly, if you're a new player and you're like listening to this and you're on the edge, or you're like, I really want to join World vs. World, I'm listening to all these cool tips for new World vs. Worlders, I'm gonna be the best, and you're like, I could join right now, I'm level 50, don't do it, please, just wait until you're 80. Like, seriously, I want you to have like the best time possible when you're going into this. That's why we're doing this episode and this podcast. Wait until you're 80, get exotic gear. Get exotic gear. Make sure you have like a World vs. World build on, which we're going to be going over knowing World vs. World builds next episode, so look for that. And just make sure that you're setting yourself up for like the best experience, because I know a lot of people, I know we advised you're going to die a lot, but you're going to die significantly more if you're not prepared in this way. Like, wait until 80. And
also, your first 80 in World vs. World is going to take the longest by far. So World vs. World gives you a ton of Tomes of Knowledge, which let you level up any new characters. You get a currency in World vs. World called a Testimony of Heroics that lets you unlock hero points by double-clicking on an item in your inventory instead of doing a hero point train. And every subsequent character that you make, as long as you're doing World vs. World every once in a while to get these currencies, is going to be easier and easier to level up in gear, because World vs. World throws a lot of this stuff at you.
True. Yeah.
So much.
Yeah, I haven't done a hero point train to unlock specs or anything like that in ages. I do so much World vs. World that I can... World vs. World and PvP. PvP is definitely better for Testimonies of Heroics. But, or not Testimonies of Heroics, Tomes of Knowledge for leveling up characters. But between those two, I don't level characters anymore. I don't go on hero point trains. I just don't need to. So take the time now to experience that content, because putting a little bit of extra time into leveling your character to 80 and gearing it a little bit and getting like your thing unlocked is gonna make the World vs. World experience better. And then after that, it's gonna kind of be a breeze, like Chef said. All this stuff is gonna be handed to you.
Yeah. And even if you're like a PvE main, using the testimony items physically unlocks and completes the hero point on your map. So like if you're doing PvE map completion, but you finished all of your hero points because you spent a bunch of testimonies on the items, those hero points are done as far as map completion is concerned, and you don't have to do them if you're doing map completion.
True. Which
is huge for zones like Heart of Maguma, where a lot of the hero points are either really difficult to solo or impossible to solo.
Oh, yeah.
True.
Nothing's
very
impossible. Selly.
Okay,
well, okay, yeah.
Look,
definitely hard though. Definitely hard.
We're assuming these are new peepos, so let's not get let's not wave our Selly wand over them and be like, Selly is everything you ever need. Yeah. Okay. Does anyone have anything else that they want to throw into that? I do have one more kind of like little thing that I want to kind of ask you guys about before we stop, but we are kind of getting to the end. So, if you guys think that that's like all the like must knows, do you want to move on? I'm down.
Get in comms and rebind dodge were the two things that I wanted to make sure someone brought up. So that was all I had on my list.
Okay.
I mean, stay on tag.
That's
Yeah,
best
just
way
like stay with the group. Yeah,
Yeah. If you're in a group.
because that's where boons are. That's where
Yeah.
healing is. That's where everything happens.
True. It's where you're gonna have the most chance of surviving. So
Down
stay
on
there.
the tag.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so one more question and then we're gonna wrap everything up. Every server is kind of different in this matter and in this aspect. But I am interested in what you think the most important unspoken rule of a borderland would be. Like, I know a common one is making sure that you're doing callouts properly. Making sure you're listing the guild, how many, what color, and where they are specifically or what direction they're heading in. Do you guys have any things like that that you, like, that pop into your head? If they don't, it's fine and we'll just wrap things up. But do you guys have any, like, unspoken things that you kind of want to let new players know about?
I've got one because it literally happened last night and I had to type in map chat about it.
Okay.
If you're like around a group and you're fighting near a tower and the wall of the tower is down, or the keep, don't repair it until the group has left. We were fighting a group around like Red Spawn Tower on one of the Alpine BLs, and we were about to push out, and some random on the map repaired the wall as we were pushing out and split our group in half as we were about to fight, and it was a complete disaster. So if you see groups fighting near an objective and you're like, oh, I'm going to repair the wall, that way it'll be harder for them to cap it. The best way to keep a group from capping an objective is just killing them. It's not repairing the wall. So wait until groups are gone from the objective before you start repairing up the tower and the walls and the gates and all that stuff.
True. I like that one. Yeah. Unless the commander asks you to repair the wall, that's another thing. Or if you're...
chat, not the podcast.
Huh?
I said read say chat to see if your commander tells you to repair.
Yeah.
But like the chat, not the podcast.
Not the podcast. Another thing is like, if you're buying time for a group to respond and you've made a call out in team chat and they say, okay, we're on our way, I personally think it's okay to repair the wall in that instance, just to buy them a little bit more time to get there, but not to repair it fully, because there's just no point at that time. I mean, another thing is this kind of has to do with repairing, but like, what are your guys' thoughts on supply and using all of the supply within within the keep or like a tower or something like that, so that there's nothing to defend with later on? What are you guys' thoughts on that one? It's a big pet peeve of mine. Like, I'll tell people, just make sure there's like 250 left in Gary, so that if we need to, we can repair, like, buy time and stuff like that. But I don't know, maybe that's just like a me thing.
I feel like you don't. Like, I'm not a PPT nerd, so.
You're not a PPT.
You like the full drain? I mean, I guess if you need it, yeah.
If you're gonna have time to get resupply into that tower or keep or Gary or whatever, I can see doing that. If you're like on the map and you're flipping things back and you're in like a Zerg, and that way like your squad is filled up with supply and stuff like that, I can definitely see that. But when it's like, I don't see another need to drain supply fully when it just puts us at a disadvantage. You know what I mean? But I don't know, that might be a me thing. Maybe I'm just a PPT nerd at heart.
What if you need it where you're going?
There are so many objectives on the map that you could pull from. You don't need to pull everything.
Yeah, it doesn't do any help though. I don't know. It's not going to help you sitting in there.
Yeah, like if look, it's the same thing as money, okay? Supply that's sitting in a tower does not turn into more supply. But if you take supply out of a tower and you use it to build a ram to get into a keep that has supply in it, that's an investment.
Okay, that's fair. But
oh my god,
I'm also an emergency fund person. I have an emergency fund just in case. That's my emergency fund. Okay, if there's someone attacking, I want at least 250 supply in there. That way I can buy time, right? Or like if I go to the hospital, I need a little bit of money in my bank just in case. I'm an emergency fund person. But so that is just a me thing. All right, what are some other unwritten rules of the Borderlands that you guys can think of?
I think there's a lot of them that are like roaming related, like a lot of little things that you kind of pick up along the way. Like if you're about to cap a sentry and you see another roamer like headed right for you, and you're at like 90% cap, just walk out of the ring. Because it's a hold the cap and then let him get some participation too, you know?
I don't know if that's even just like a roamer thing. I think that's just like a general courtesy thing in World versus World. Like,
yeah. So many people don't do it though.
I'll step out of the ring if there's like tons of people coming to me and I'll be like, get in here. Get some credit. Get your pips.
Get some credit, yeah.
I think that kind of leads also to like the south camps on the non-desert BLs and the outside of EPG, like duels. You don't want to interrupt duels. You don't want to be that person.
Yeah, you will eventually learn as you get more experience in World versus World where the 1v1 spots are and where the GVG spots are on the Borderlands. And if you see people in those spots, if you see two guilds fighting in those spots or you see two people fighting in those spots, just don't interrupt it because they probably have their own thing going that they're trying to do and like they're competing and having a little bit of fun competing and stuff like that. If you want to join in, then you ask them to join in, but don't just jump in because it might ruin things for them and just make their time worse, and then they get angry and they whisper you angry things or they don't. Like I like that one. Yeah,
I think that's even like a more general tip is like everyone's kind of doing their own thing in World versus World, so don't get upset or don't get mad if someone like asks you to leave or asks you not to do something. The first example that I can think of, because again, it happened like last week, is there was a person in team chat who was getting mad that they were doing scout calls and nobody was responding. But it's like they were calling 5 to 10 man groups, and we had a group of like 30 people.
Yeah.
It's not economical for a group of 30 people to respond to a group of 5 people, because that group of 5 is just going to leave. But it doesn't mean that like we don't appreciate you scouting. It just means that we're not the right group to respond to that, and that's okay.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
So if you're going to be that person who's scouting, or you're going to be that person who didn't know about like the Fight Island spot on the South Island on the Alpine Borderlands, you got asked to leave, just try and be reasonable if the person who's talking to you has made an effort to be reasonable.
True. SAHANA and Z, you guys haven't spoken on the matter or put in your 2 cents. Do you guys want to? Or do you think everything's been said?
I think everything that I thought of, has been said. Especially about like honestly, like Regal and Chef said, you don't really know what other people are have planned between them. There have been many times where I randomly wandered across like a duel and did not understand the situation and accidentally killed one of them. So, and I wasn't made aware until afterwards. So it takes a little while to kind of get a read on the situation, but it's not really like a charge in, guns blazing sort of situation all the time.
True.
That is true. I mean, no, I think a lot of the things have already been said. I mean, if anything, if you're like in a group, like let the commander throw down the siege and only build the siege that the commander throws down.
Ooh.
Because they're guild catapults or fire rams, and they cost less supply than like the crappy ones, we'll call them. I think
Walmart siege.
The Walmart siege. Like, because there's been a couple times people, and I think that people are just trying to help out, but they throw down the crappy siege, and it's just like, if you don't have enough supply, it's just gonna mess up your like strategy or whatever, trying to get into a keep or something. But I don't know if it's like a pet peeve of mine, but like only build what the commander puts down and only let the commander put it down. Like, you don't need to help the commander put down siege, because they have a ton of it, probably.
If they don't, they're gonna ask a specific person to put it down.
They will say something in chat if they need help, but like, don't do that. That's it.
Yeah, this is definitely not just a you thing, so that's a good thing to bring up.
Yeah, another
good.
thing is, if you're short on supply, generally, I don't know if you guys do this one, but building left to right so that there's a build order and you make sure you get at least one siege thing built, and don't have like 3 half-built things.
Half-built siege, I'm like, well, shit.
Half-built catapults just sitting there, and then you're like, oh, well, now I need to go run to a camp, and that's gonna take a long time. So, like, building left to right is the general rule that I've heard.
That's a smart way to do it. That's a smart way to do it.
I think that's very much a unspoken rule nowadays.
Yeah.
People do tend to just do one at a time rather than flock to all different ones.
Because I just don't trust, you know?
Fair. That's fair.
But yeah, I think that's a pretty, at least for me, I've noticed.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only thing I can add.
Yeah, it is a good one, though. It is a good one. Like, make sure you're building Commander Siege, and then make sure you're building left to right so that your supply is used wisely.
Yeah.
Because it sucks when you finally get to Inner on Firekeep, and then you're like, okay, build left to right, and then they build all of them at the same time, and you're like, now none of these are built, and we have to leave the keep, even though we're on Inner, and get more supply, and then come back.
And then everything's destroyed.
Yeah.
Maybe. It's frustrating. It messes up your flow as a commander trying to take objectives.
The flow.
So
it's important.
It is important.
I think that about covers everything. I think we give a lot of good information in this one. Hopefully a lot of the new players who are listening to this get something valuable out of it, even if a majority of you know 90% of this information. If you just learned one thing, then I think the episode was really successful. And we brought up a lot of things that were either like off the beaten track in ways of tips or unspoken rules, or they were very common knowledge. But hopefully it's constructive. For now, I'm going to wrap up this episode and say thank you for listening. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe if you want to listen to more of this content. The rest of this season is going to be focused on World vs. World for new players. These guys are very, very knowledgeable on the game mode, as you can tell. Some of them are commanders, some of them aren't. And all of the things that they're saying is definitely worth listening to and taking into consideration when you're entering into the Borderlands. As a new player, or as someone who has done Guild Wars 2 PvE a lot and is trying to get into World vs. World, or whatever background you have, we are going to try and give you the best information we can this season to get you comfortable enough to actually enter the Borderland. But yeah, YouTube, subscribe, like, share with friends if you think that this information is good for them. If you're on Spotify, thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. We're newly on Spotify. We're going to include helpful links in the description below, especially Reddish's links, like Chef said. And we're going to be including ways you can contact any of the panel members if you'd like to contact them and, I don't know, talk to them about their tips or anything like that. If you're on the same server and you'd like their help, I'm sure none of them would object to you reaching out and saying, like, I heard you on Say Chat, help. Give me some tips. I'm sure they would be fine with that. I guess I can't speak for them, but you guys would be okay with that, I'm assuming?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah, I'm down.
And if you're new and you're actually new, I will buy you gear. Easy.
Yo, Regal is the big whale in the chat.
Oh my god.
Honestly, though, Regal's a really good resource if you want to get into anything Guild Wars 2. He streams, Chef streams. I don't think SAHANA and Z stream, but
no.
They are very helpful resources, and I will include their in-game names down below. But yeah, anyway, we'll see you in the next episode, where we're going to be going over learning a world versus world build, what matters, what doesn't matter, and all of that fun stuff. So we'll see you next time, chat.